Everyone, Temporal here. Hey everyone, Temporal here, and we are doing some updated collegiate power rankings. For those that aren't aware, we've been a little light on those this season. My apologies for that, but we are currently 6 of 8 rounds through the Swiss bracket that is occurring for Activision Blizzard's collegiate tournament, and we're going to go ahead and catch up on where teams are. They did split into East and West, so we haven't had quite as much mixing up at the top and in the middle as we might usually. And we'll be following up with our power rankings here, which you'll be able to jump to the end to see if you want. I'll also post a link probably to Twitter or something like that, as well as we're going to be covering next week, since we're doing some more of this, like who had free paths, who had easy paths, to really good seeding, that sort of thing. Because I do expect we're going to see quite a few teams getting 7-1 records and pretty decent seeds, for example, for groups, without having to beat any team better than like 4K, 4.1K. So we'll have to see. We'll have to think about how that worked in the split. But for now, let's look at our coverage. So I'm mostly for this looking at the ABC matchups, and I'm looking at NACE matchups. If I'm aware of other matchups that have happened, great. I'm happy to factor those in here. I've done quite a bit of tracking. Sometimes I'll miss up the stuff that happened in NECC because it's kind of a pain to track if you're not actively participating in it. The outflow from that updates aren't particularly good. I am aware of what's going on in ESC, but there can also be lots of local little mini weekend tournaments or LANs or things like that I miss. So if I'm wrong, if like, hey, no, you don't know about this matchup, you don't know that Northwood crushed Maryville in XYV or whatever, in XYZ or whatever, do let me know. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and get our top 5 teams up there because they haven't really moved around. We can throw Maryville up there. That's fine. They do make our top 5. We can also go ahead and throw Harrisburg up there. They're going to make our top 5 as well. We'll get Bay State in there. And then we're going to go ahead and get ISU and Northwood in here as well. Nothing too wild here. Northwood is last season's champions. Okay, we can sort of honorarily give them the top spot. Have they done anything to really earn that? Well, who have they beat this season? They did beat Converse. They beat Mystery Machine. They beat UW Stout, Mizzou, the Pizza Pirates. So those are some teams. Mizzou isn't great this season. Pizza Pirates are fine. UW Stout are fine. Converse is really the best of those teams. Okay, Converse is a solid team. That's something, but they haven't really beat a top 8 team to lock in this spot in those. Could they have beat a top 18 in something like NECC? Yes, they certainly could have. I'm sorry. Those are a pain to follow. Do let me know in the comments or in chat since I'm live streaming this. Then we move on to ISU. They've beat CU Boulder, Illinois Orange, again, UW Stout, Mizzou, Pizza Pirates. That's not doing too much for them. Hey, whatever. We don't really care about those. Fine, whatever. They went ahead and beat CU Boulder, Illinois Orange. Those are something. Not a ton to hold that up. I actually think of our top 5, the ones who, at least in ABC, have put the most up there to sort of prove that top 5 spot are Bay State, who have gone ahead and beaten out SCAD, Lords, Penn State, and Ontario Tech Student Union. And when we look at that, SCAD we're going to see is probably a top 8 team rounding out the top 8. Maybe they'll fall a little bit this season, but last season they were top 8. They haven't done anything this season, though what they're competing in seems to be a little light to prove that they would have fallen out of that. Maybe they're better, maybe they're worse. We're ultimately going to have to see, but their only losses are to schools like Bay State, who you do mostly expect to take them down. That said, they're solid. Lords did go ahead and beat Northeastern this season. Lords is in a pretty good spot on the leaderboard in terms of what they've done there. Hey, beating Lords, that's a solid thing to help solidify them up here. Then we move on to Maryville, who did beat Riverside. Okay, that's something. They were top 32 last season. Hawaii and Iowa. Iowa maybe looks a little bit better than last season. Still definitely not a world beater, but we can go, hey, those are some okay schools to go, hey, you beat them. You were supposed to. Then ultimately we will move on to Harrisburg and see that they also beat Converse and Mystery Machine. So they've got a little bit propping that up as well. That's kind of solid. That's kind of real. Hey, not like, oh my goodness, top of the world real, but if you're looking at Converse, that's probably like a somewhere in the 9 to 12 in terms of strength school right now. At least again, based on what I'd guesstimate, beating them, that's something. And then Mystery Machine. Mystery Machine aren't fantastic or anything. Last season, I believe they missed out on playoffs, but they just barely missed out on playoffs. That's something. We'll go ahead and use that. That brings us into the next 3 slots, and UC Irvine is going to go ahead and hang out in the next spot here. UC Irvine has kind of proven that this is it. They deserve to belong sort of in that 6th spot as the next best school. They did take down Boise. They did that, I believe, in the NACE. They were both in the West region, and they got that win there. So, hey, that makes sense. They also took down Illinois Orange, okay, and UW Stout. Fine, those make sense. Illinois Orange was top 16 last season. UW Stout was top 32 last season. Hey, those should still be solid enough schools. They beat out Boise. Boise was top 16 last season and has a history of being pretty good. Hey, they've done some things to prove that they potentially belong at the top of this for this season. Cool, makes sense to me. So who can we move on to next? Well, University of Texas, Dallas. Last season, they might have been part of the Big Six. Maybe they're part of the Big Six again. We would need to face off between them and one of the 5 to see if they can take the win, or we'd need them to get their matchup against UC Irvine, which we may see. I mean, we've got our West region. They're both in it. The central schools ended up over in the Western region with how ABC did it split, and we could see that. They've gotten some good wins so far. They did beat out Bellevue, UC Santa Cruz, University of Washington, so that's looking pretty good, and then UC San Diego. So they've got lots of meaningful wins. Definitely can't be too upset about that one. And that brings us over to what I'm going to slot in the 8th spot for now, which as soon as I find it, as soon as I stall for time long enough to be able to find it, is going to be our 8th school, which I do believe I've already tilted my hand and said is SCAD. UTD stonks down, Scrimbuck say. Yeah, I can see that. I'm still not sure they're so far down that I'd move them much lower than I've put them here. If you think they go significantly lower than this, EMF, for those that don't know, EMF plays for Santa Cruz, I definitely want to know that. Like, if you're telling me that, hey, you guys are crushing them, I definitely do want to know that. I have seen them pick up their wins is the thing, and they've actually, of these 8, I'd say the schools that have really picked up the wins in ABC that are like, hey, you've kind of proven that you belong in these spots are really only these 3 so far. I think that'll change this weekend as we'll have a lot of 6-0 schools go against each other, and there aren't many 6-0 schools left, though with how this is broken up, you've got a lot of 6-0 going against 5-1 and sometimes dodging each other, which is weird, but I'd say these are the 3 in ABC that have mostly actually gotten the wins to go ahead and establish that they do belong, towards the top here. Losing to For Fun Gamers, real, 1 into match. Okay. Is USC any good? I'm new to Overwatch Collegiate. USC, they're okay if memory serves. We've got quite, well, it depends which USC you're talking about. If you're talking about University of Southern California or University of Southern Carolina. Depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about Southern Carolina, they've actually had to do quite a few forfeits. They won a few matches, but I believe they just forfeited over their spring break last weekend to both schools. So they're okay, but they forfeited, and that's just kind of what they did. They're not serious enough to do it, or they couldn't figure it out. I don't know what to tell you. You can't expect every opponent to reschedule for you through. I think they had Northeastern and Miami, Ohio, and I think they took forfeits to both of those because, there wasn't ability to reschedule. We tried to be flexible with them, but the only days we could really reschedule to were Friday or Monday, and that didn't work for them. So if that's the one you're talking about, they're kind of in forfeit territory. If you're talking about Southern California, they're okay. They could probably be top 32 West. They wouldn't be top 32 overall. They're, I believe, a GM level team, but they're certainly not like a, 4-4 level team. Southern California. Yeah, they're fine. California has some okay teams. They wouldn't be the third best school in California. They probably wouldn't be the fourth best school in California. They might get like the fifth or sixth best school in California. California has some okay teams. As you can see, California does have UC Irvine, which would be really the top team out of California. You can also see they've got UCLA, which was top 32 last season. They've also got UC Riverside, which I don't think I have in here this season, but has gone back and forth. UC Riverside, which would be another one in California that would be pretty solid. They've got UC Santa Cruz, which would be the second best school out of California there. So yeah, they might be coming in like 6th or 7th, and maybe Cal wants to mix it up there, and Cal's like a 4K team. They're okay. They, could conceivably make it to groups. They won't go anywhere in groups. Okay. I was continuing here, and my eyes, as I was doing all that, was basically just trying to find SCAD, and I'm not seeing them for some reason. Did my SCAD disappear? Oh, it's the B. No, there it is. I forgot it's the B. I can't really see it. My bad. SCAD, hey. They're here. They haven't lost matches that say we should move them. We'll see. They were good last season. Really what they have so far is a loss to Bay State and not really any meaningful wins in ABC. They're not in NACE. I don't see them in a ton of other things playing right now. Hey, we're just going to have to deal with what we have here. So now we get out of the top 8. This is the top 8. For now, this is what we'd consider pretty elite. Hey, that's pretty good. But what happens when we move on from the top 8? Well, we're going to go ahead and get into Converse, and I am still going to put Converse here. They did beat Kennesaw. They did beat UCF Knights. They lost to Northwood, Harrisburg. So their losses are to Northwood, Harrisburg. Those are schools that we would expect them to beat. We don't really have the best feel on Kennesaw yet. Kennesaw, solid enough roster, played in some places. Hey, maybe they should be watched out for. Don't have a perfect read on them yet. We'll get to who they've won and lost to later. But they have lost to Kennesaw. UCF Knights, certainly looking better this season than last season. Done solidly enough. Converse put them down. Okay, we'll keep Converse here for now. That makes sense to me. And then UC Santa Cruz, I wasn't expecting to put this high, but I'm going to put them this high. I know it's not the same full roster as last season, but they're doing pretty well. If we look at what they've accomplished, they beat Utah, they beat Grandview, they lost to University of Texas, Dallas. They're doing what they're supposed to do. I don't really have cause to move them. Yeah, can't really do much. Scout is next to us. Yeah, I can see that. I haven't scrimmed with you guys this season, but we have scrimmed with SCAD plenty, and I can see that. Your man, Baba Bunny, basically the new Snozzler, so also Zebra Goated. Nice. Happy to hear that your new players are filling in, doing what they're supposed to, and you guys have been able to hang on. Sadly, I cannot go, here's UC Santa Cruz, and the next school in a row is let me just throw up Northeastern. No, I can't do that. That's not Northeastern this season, but I'm glad to hear that you guys held on there. So good for you guys. I think you guys are, about where I'm saying you should be then in terms of, hey, I've put you, one spot. I've put Converse between you and SCAD, but basically one spot away from SCAD makes sense to me. And I think SCAD is less solidly in the top 8 this season than they were last season. So ultimately, we'll see what gets mixed up in there. Cool. You meant, when you were looking for them. Got it. Okay, well, that's fine too. So, from UC Santa Cruz, we'll go ahead and move on to Boise. I've got no reason to knock Boise here. They beat Bellevue. They beat Grand Canyon University. They beat UC San Diego. They beat University of Southern California. And they lost to UCI. Okay, lost to UC Irvine. That makes sense. UC Irvine isn't a tier above them. No big surprise there. They were top 16 last season. Trying not to lean very hard on last season as we're deep enough into this season now, but we'll use it to inform things a little bit. And for now, this makes sense. We'll go ahead and put them here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move up to, we're going to go ahead and move up to our Gators. University of Florida. And They were top 16 last season, and it looks like they're going to return there pretty solidly there. They beat Miami, Ohio. They beat Kennesaw. They beat University of Massachusetts. They've done pretty well. They've maintained their 6-0 in ABC. You know, they'll have some harder matches this season, but they already had to get through some reasonably solid matches there, and they did it again. So we're going to go ahead and slot them in there before we finish off with Utah. Utah, I know the roster looks a little weaker. They don't have any meaningful wins. They beat Davis. So what? Who cares? They did lose to UC Santa Cruz, as we discussed earlier. It's very possible that they don't have the support for this and that they're going to fall off. Just like SCAD didn't really have the support in terms of the wins to back it up. In fact, I'd say all of these, if we're looking through these, don't have all the support that we might like to keep them in their spots, but we're not going to just throw them down in here because we don't know yet. They're not losing matches that they shouldn't lose, so we're going to go ahead and keep them in somewhat reasonable spots. But it could be a very exciting day tomorrow as a lot of these things move around as we get better information. Okay. As we go ahead and move on here, we're going to see from here, let's go ahead and get Lords. Lords, they beat Northeastern, they beat the Ucf Knights, they lost to Bay State. They're supposed to lose to Bay State. I mean, I'm sure they'd like to beat Bay State, but we covered that already. They took some good wins. That makes sense. We can go ahead and slot them in down here. Behind that, we'll go ahead and bring in Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio, solid. They seem to be better this season. They have beat Akron a couple times. They did beat Northeastern. Then they lost to UF Orange. So that's another one of the things that University of Florida took that win there. Hey, this seems about right. We'll go ahead and slot them in here. From here, we'll go ahead and move on. Northeastern, fallen down a bit. Pains my heart, but it absolutely is true. Not quite as strong as we'd have liked last, or as we'd have seen last season. Beat Akron a few times. Did lose to Lords. Did lose to Miami, Ohio. Maybe Northeastern will fall further. For now, we're going to go ahead and slot them in here. Next, we move on to the UCF Knights. Let me go ahead and get our Knights here. Let me take a look as my eyeballs deceive me. Sometimes my eyeballs let me down here. I have a cheat sheet. There we go. Let's get our Knights icon. And we'll go ahead and get our Knights in here. Seems like Bellevue is pretty low not to be in Dark Horse. I hear you, but I mean, I'm going to get to them pretty soon. They don't have any meaningful wins. I'll be catching up on Bellevue pretty darn soon. They are going to end up in this making moves tier. So I will get to them, EMF, but they don't have meaningful wins to really support being better than that. And I can also tell you, the inside knowledge, the scrim scene, etc., that it was okay. Not like, oh my goodness, they're amazing. Not like, oh my goodness, they're terrible. But, you have to do what you can based off of what are they doing in matches? Do we have any inside information from scrims? What's going on? That sort of thing. Mostly we're looking at the matches and they don't have those yet. But I'll get to them in just a moment. UCF Knights, so the other Florida team, they did beat Penn State, so good for them. They got that win over Penn State. Last season, Penn State was a top 16 finish, and then they lost to, I want to say that was Lords? Yeah, they lost to Lords. So we'll go ahead and put them in here. That makes sense. Reasonable, whatever. Are we going to see some Florida dominance this season? No, Florida's not going to win at all, but we've got two good Florida schools right above and below each other here to, Florida showing up here for this season, if it holds out like that. We'll go ahead and move on to Grandview next. Grandview, there's some talent there. They beat UW. Okay, got to pay attention to that. But then they lost to UC Santa Cruz. We talked about that. Santa Cruz looking to be, hey, there's maybe as strong as last semester, maybe stronger. Looks pretty good. We like that. Put Grandview in their place. But Grandview did beat UW. And we do know from the last couple seasons, unless UW has just gotten a lot weaker this season, UW is a consistent playoff or group stage school. They can go at that 4-4 level level, that sort of thing, hey, that's going to put their name on the map a little bit here. And then we will go ahead and round it out with Bellevue. And it's possible that Bellevue should be higher, but I am putting Bellevue for now in this tier. Again, tomorrow will get to show us a lot of things. We'll get to surprise us with things. But the problem is, you know, they've got wins against UNT and Mizzou, a loss to Boise, and University of Texas, Dallas. So they've got the loss to Boise, so maybe they could be in the dark horse tier, but they'd have to be towards the back of the dark horse tier. They are in this situation where they beat UNT, but everyone has kind of beaten UNT. In fact, I think UNT is like forfeiting its way through NACE. I don't think that's quite going on. I think they're just having roster issues. I think NACE kicks people out if they forfeit more than twice. So I don't want to be like, they're forfeiting everything. But UNT seems to, you know, be not, you know, a lot of people have wins over whatever happened to UNT there. So I don't really have a win that I can pin on Bellevue, and Bellevue doesn't seem to be competing in anything else there either for me to be able to go, oh, well, they won this over here. If someone knows of a tournament that they competed in this season, fantastic. I want to know about it, but mostly I don't think they're competing in too much. I actually don't know that their players are playing that much Overwatch. Yes, they have a lot of former contenders talent there, but their former contenders talent may be off playing other games or off focusing on school, that sort of thing. Okay. So then we go ahead and move on to Kennesaw. They're going to be new to the scene here. We haven't really seen them make plays before. They did put their name on the map by beating Rutgers. Rutgers had a strong team last season, but then didn't quite make it. Could have made it, didn't if memory serves. Was a little surprised not to see them make it. They may end up going that same way again this season. We'll have to see, but ultimately they, for now, haven't made my short list of teams here because I can't fit all of the teams. We're ultimately going to have 32 teams from each region, and I can't perfectly predict exactly which 32 teams, nor will my template hold 64 images here of this quality. But Kennesaw, they did beat Rutgers. They also beat the New York Ultraviolet, St. Clair. They lost to UF Orange. Loss to UF Orange shows us about what their cap is. Win against the Ultraviolet, St. Clair. Those are GM teams. Those are, you know, probably I would guess like 4.2 range teams if I had to. Maybe a little bit lower. Rutgers is stronger than that, probably in the 4.3, 4.4 range. Okay, we have a solid thing. We'll put this towards the top of our good teams tier. And then the loss to UF Orange, obviously, they can't be too much better than, say, they can't really be better than our dark horse tier. Cool. Makes sense to me. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to Grand Canyon University. And Grand Canyon beat UNT twice, both in NACE and in ESC, or NACE and ABC, excuse me. And that's cool. But again, I don't quite know what's going on with UNT. And then they lost to Boise and University of Texas, Dallas. Okay, so we know that they're not better than these two, but that's a pretty high bar, and we know they're better than UNT, but we don't know what's going on with UNT here. None of their other wins are really against meaningful schools. I can't do too much with it. We're going to go ahead and throw them in the good teams tier here. Then we move on to TAMU. TAMU might be surprising people because if we look at them in the West Division, I believe they currently just with how it happens to work, they're 6-0, and it shows them in the number 2 slot. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're good. But what they've got to back that up so far is beating Hawaii, beating Iowa, beating Cal. Cal is like a flat GMT, maybe a little bit lower. Hawaii, okay, Hawaii will probably make playoffs. They almost made playoffs last season, or not playoffs, but group stages last season. And then Iowa looks better this season than last season, but none of those are terribly meaningful wins either. Like, that's something I have a little bit of, okay, I know that you're better than that base GM level. That's good, but it's not enough for me to go, oh yeah, your 6-0 is going to put you up here, for example. Like, I can't do that based on what I'm seeing. We don't have a good enough measuring stick for their heights yet. That's what we're going to go ahead and look at. Kennesaw beat UCF in NACE earlier this season. Oh, excellent. Excellent. That doesn't terribly surprise me. I was looking for a way to potentially go, they beat UCF? Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and throw them up here then. I am perfectly happy to do that. Cool. Thank you for that, Alec. I'll check that real quick. I believe you, but I'll check that real quick. I'm surprised that I missed that, honestly. Let me take a look. Kennesaw. Nathan's a little annoying this season in that they've allowed teams to do weird renames. But no, I shouldn't have missed that one. They did have the win against the UCF Knights, 3-1. Thank you for that. Cool. So we'll go ahead and put them there. That does help. Thank you for that. Shout out to GCU for getting the late invite coming out for the Stanford invite for Frisbee and absolutely rocking. Nice. Good stuff. Some Frisbee. Okay, cool. That's fine. We're going to go ahead and be through that. And now we're going to move on to Grand Canyon. No, I got Grand Canyon, got Tamu. And now we'll go ahead and move on to UW. We have a feel for how UW's been for the last 2 seasons. They lost to UTD. They lost to Grandview. We put Grandview up here. They don't have any meaningful wins yet this season. Again, with our split between our 2 regions, even though the final rounds of Swiss are tomorrow, it's only been 6 rounds that we've been through. We've split the schools up a little more. Don't have any meaningful wins for UW yet. Just going to go ahead and have to sit them here. Illinois Orange, looking a little bit similar. If I can find my Illinois Orange. There we go. Illinois Orange did get themselves that top 16 last season. Maybe they'll get back up there. They did beat UW Stout. Okay, that's something. That was a top 32 team last season. But then they lost to Redbirds, lost to UCI, and then they lost to the Pizza Pirates. And the Pizza Pirates really aren't at the level of the UCIs, really aren't at the level of the Redbirds. Wouldn't have expected to see them pick up that loss, so that's going to hold them back a little bit here. Which, is fine. There's still plenty of room to move around, and we'll see how that works. And that loss was over in NACE, not in ABC, so there's room for them to go, hey, their record's still looking pretty good if they can find the wins there. Okay. We can go ahead and throw UCSD up here. At this point, things get a little messy. This whole tier has been a little messy because you have teams that have won against one person that should be better than them but lost to the other, or they have no wins really supporting it. You have a lot of stuff down here where they have good records, which is true for UCSD as well. They've got a good record, but they haven't really gone against anyone that would be worried about. They lost to Boise. They lost to University of Texas, Dallas. Okay, well, those schools are way up here. What do we do with that? Well, we put them in this tier. They didn't make playoffs or groups last season. They did make top 32 the season before that. Are they any good? They seem to be okay. They had some presence at the California thing that got done sort of between seasons here. So, hey, could be pretty good. Hope they will be. What happened to Waldorf Winthrop? Waldorf doesn't have a viable roster. Their roster just exploded at the very end of last season, so Waldorf's not going to be in play, but I've seen them out doing their scouting, doing their recruiting, so maybe they'll have some roster that's solid again for next season, but they don't have it for this season. And Waterloo, I don't think signed up, or maybe they signed up and lost to and withdrew. I don't remember. I thought I saw them earlier in it, but I can't swear to that. They're not in it right now, or if they are, they're way down with an unsustainable number of losses. So I don't think they're in play here. Cool. Yeah, Waldorf. Again, they might be looking next season to field one EMF, but no, they don't have one this season. They're not going to make our tier list. I just have a couple things here because I updated my previous tier list. I got some of the new schools in here, but I will be leaving an unfiltered category where I can tell you right now that I'm not going to end up placing all these schools. I've actually only got a few more placements that we're going to do here. Okay. We can go ahead and we don't need that one. Let's do a quick look here. Cool. Let's go ahead and get CU Boulder, UCLA up there. They're confusing. CU Boulder beat UCLA, got that revenge win from last season. Good on them. But then lost to a school that they had no business losing to. Let me see if I've got that pulled up. They lost to Redbirds. They lost to Iowa. Again, Iowa looks stronger than last season. Okay, fine. But again, they're sitting there going, hey, they got their win on UCLA, Rebel, San Diego State University, lost to Redbirds, lost to Iowa. Iowa's fine, but that's just inconsistent, a little bit of a swing of what we'd expect from them. UCLA beats OU Crimson. That's something. That's a win. We know who they are. That's a team that, okay, we have some idea of where to place that. Then they lost to CU Boulder. They're going to end up down in this tier. I'm going to go ahead and throw UNT up next. I got nothing to do here. I mean, if I look at UNT, they lost to Bellevue, they lost to Grand Canyon, they're getting crushed in Nace. I don't know what's quite is going on there. I have scrimmed against them and they've been okay, not within the last week or two, but I think they're having roster issues and, I don't know if in scrims they're coming out with someone that they can't use in play or if maybe we scrimmed them and then they lost someone or what, but hey, there's something going on over there clearly. And then just to fill these things out a little bit more, we'll go ahead and throw Akron up there. I thought I had Rebel Gaming in here, but I don't. We could throw in Iowa. We can, where did I miss Penn State? There's no way. Oh, Penn State. There we go. My bad. Penn State was supposed to be up here. Sorry about that, guys. Penn State, they beat Rutgers. They beat GMU. GMU, like a 4-2 team there. They did lose to UCF. So, again, these Knights have a little bit more propping them up here. That makes sense. And then they lost to Bay State as well, which is just like, okay, shrug, whatever. That's what's going to happen there. Akron. Lost to Northeastern a couple times, lost to Miami, Ohio. Nothing too wild there. And then Toronto Blue. They did make top 32 last season by the skin of their teeth. Looks like they'll do it again this season, especially with the split. They're in such a place where they did beat Shenandoah, about a 4-2 team, I'd say. Lost to Mystery Machine. Mystery Machine missed out on top 32 last season. Maybe they're a little stronger this season. Hard to really know. So again, I'm not listing 64 schools here. I can't fit 64 schools in this tier list. There's definitely more schools that could mix into this tier for sure. And the order in this tier, well, I tried to do nothing that was absolutely wrong in terms of putting this tier in order. This tier is always going to be a little bit of a mess because it really gets into any given day territory. What did people have for breakfast? Did people have a good warm up? That sort of thing, because there's a fair amount of shaking it up in that sort of territory. And again, UC Riverside probably belongs in here. These guys are like flat 4K, Carnegie Mellon Catgirls. Mizzou probably is like flat 4K this season. Ohio State, not in such great shape. UW Stout does still belong in here, probably belongs in here. A little bit higher, maybe around like here-ish territory. But yeah, that's really about what I'd be looking at so far for the power rankings. The beautiful thing is these will blow up tomorrow. We will have a ton of high-impact, really meaningful matches tomorrow, and we'll get to see, hey, how does everything move around? Do some of these people or some of these teams that maybe don't have a ton of things supporting their positions, so we could look at some of these, go, hey, they fall massively, do we get something, they fall massively, do we see something where, hey, some interesting wins happen, and like UCSD maybe shoots up, or CU Boulder does its more, hey, are we going to be good, or are we going to be bad thing? UNT decides if they're going to feel, if they have a real team or not. Are we going to see, hey, Bellevue took a couple losses, hasn't really been able to put anything super meaningful on the board, sort of wins against unknown teams. Are they going to put a real win together? Really hard to know where this is going to go. We could see a similar thing out of Kennesaw. Really tough to know where this one is going to go, and that's what makes it fun. I wanted to get this out here so that there was something out here we could see what the movement looked like. Again, I will be doing a fair bit more coverage next week. We'll of course do updated power rankings. We'll be talking about the strengths of the various groups that happen, and we're also going to be looking at some of the schools that maybe got free passes into strong setups in groups, because remember, there's only 8 rounds for Swiss here, and if there's only 8 rounds for Swiss, you can see some pretty weird stuff. Like, if you look at Scarlet Squires matchups, that would be Rutgers' second team, they could go 7-1 without ever having to beat an opponent better than 4-1. And that would probably get them a pretty good seed in groups. Or you could see Rit Orange doing pretty much the same thing after having lost to, I believe, someone's B team. Overwatch 1? only had to beat Rit Orange to go 7-1. Like there's gonna be some interesting teams that get in there that are like, are these new faces? Are these real? Or did they just sort of get nice easy paths through here? But yeah, that said, hope you guys enjoyed. Good luck to you all this weekend. Good luck to you as well, EMF, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you're enjoying the content, please do drop a like, consider subscribing, and I will see you there. Thanks. Temporal out.